Good morning, everybody. I'm Jennifer Phillips Russo. I'm the Lake Erie Regional Grape Program Viticulture Extension Specialist, and I'm here with Kevin Martin today. So it is early April, and it's during the COVID-19 pandemic, and it is a very fluid situation. Things are changing daily and sometimes hourly, but we do have some information for you as far as small business management, and I'm going to send it over to Kevin because that's his wheelhouse, and I'm just sit back and ask questions. Kevin.
Sure. I think I want to start with a little bit of a big picture description of the economy in general, and then how it's going to affect grape growers. So what we know now, we're a couple weeks into this. What we know now is the economy has an off switch, so you can just turn it off, and we did. It looks like this. This is what the off switch looks like. Let me see if I can share this. Hold on 1 second. Okay. Can you see that graph? It's very hard to see because that graph is broken. So that's 50 years of unemployment data. Those are new filings every week. And you see the blue line bouncing around a little bit towards the bottom of the graph. And then for the last 2 weeks, there is a line straight up to right around 6.5 million. So what that means is typically unemployment filings are a couple 100,000 a week. And in the worst case scenario, the record was 650,000 in a single week. And 2 weeks ago, we had just over 3 million. And last week we had 6.4 million. So that's very close to 10 million unemployed over the course of 2 weeks. So chances are you probably know somebody who's unemployed. It's either very close to you or not too distant. And we expect those numbers to continue to rise. Those are that's data pulled from unemployment websites. So you actually have to apply for unemployment to show up in that number. With numbers like that, state websites were down. They've crashed every day for the past 2 weeks. So that has slowed the application process. So I think everybody kind of recognized that there was a risk that turning the economy off would turn the economy off. And the federal government recently passed a couple of different pieces of legislation. One was just very late last week, and a couple were actually a few weeks ago. The earlier ones basically just increased funding for existing programs and changed some of the regulations surrounding them. So for example, small business loans, disaster loans, farmers were never eligible for those. They had things like crop insurance instead. They were supposed to go to USDA for their loans. There is a disaster program for COVID-19, and farmers will be eligible for those very low interest loans that can last for a fairly long period of time. The terms can be up to 30 years, especially when you're looking at rebuilding buildings. It's not very clear what those terms will be for COVID-19 like disasters, but it's a variable. It's a very good way to get inexpensive financing if it's needed. One would have to certify that they were in some way affected by COVID-19. And good news for our growers so far is those effects are pretty small, but we have seen some issues, particularly difficulty getting financing in this market, and that may be enough to qualify for the loan. Now, getting back to that unemployment, it was really easy to recognize that was going to be one of the biggest problems here. So the unemployment program was temporarily overhauled, and these changes will be in effect either till the end of this year or until the end of July, depending on what change you're talking about. So payments for the unemployed will be boosted by $600 a week. What does that mean for farmers? It probably means that hiring new employees could be a little bit more difficult, at least until the end of July. So hiring the unemployed who no longer have to necessarily look for work in the same way they did, because for the most part, other than in agriculture and other essential services, it's very difficult or impossible to look for work because all these businesses are shut down. Mm-hmm. So the expectation on the unemployed is going to be different until July is over. The other thing is there was a problem with unemployment from the perspective of the unemployed in that our economy has shifted away from traditional employment. A lot more people are 1099 contract workers. and there was a recognition of this, and it was expanded to people who are not traditionally covered. That includes farmers. So farmers can collect unemployment if they're unable to work. If they're unable to work for reasons related to COVID-19. So if you get it, if someone in your family gets it, if you have to stop taking a salary draw or stop working because you're staying home with a kid who can't go to school because it's closed. There's a whole class of workers that need to show that their unemployment is real and related to COVID-19. And then they can collect unemployment insurance and these people, like farmers, couldn't do that before. So we've got 10 million layoffs. Whether that affects you directly or indirectly, I think probably being aware of these changes in unemployment insurance, I know for a fact they'll probably affect your personal life in an indirect way, whether it's a family member or a friend. It may impact your business as well. And if you have any issues with COVID-19 directly, if it's affecting you or affecting your ability to work for any of those reasons, it will be a program that's there until July. Or, well, until the end of the year for those expanded effects. The $600 payment is until July.
I have a question. This just came to me, and this is putting you on the spot, but we are, as growers, a really tight community. Like, we talk to each other a lot. We talk about what's working, what's not working, and God forbid one of our growers goes down with the COVID-19 and cannot, at a critical point in the growing season, get out there. Another grower comes in to help out. Could that be part of this program as like an employee? I just want people to feel safe knowing that this is actually here for them.
Yeah, so unemployment insurance isn't particularly helpful from a practical standpoint. And I think that's kind of what you're getting at a little bit. So if a grower can't work, a grower can get maybe $600 to $1,000 a week, but that doesn't take care of the vineyard.
Right.
It gives them a little bit of money for a few months. So that's not particularly helpful in a business that is basically preserving capital and getting a crop to harvest. Yeah, we're a close-knit community. We've seen injuries before where growers find other growers to step in and help them. Obviously, if you have money coming in through unemployment insurance, you're free to use that however you want. If it's, hiring additional staff or recruiting a grower owner to help you take care of things, it is a fixed amount based on unemployment insurance calculations plus that extra $600, so that it is what it is. It doesn't really matter for unemployment insurance. If if it costs you $100,000 to pay somebody to take care of your vineyard, it's not going to affect your unemployment insurance.
But it helps.
But that's a really nice segue into some of the other programs they passed. So let me just say that I've heard this because I think our growers have probably heard it too. But before we get into the other programs that would help, if you do actually have an issue directly related to COVID-19 on your operation, everybody gets $1,200. I mean, not exactly everyone, but 96% of the people who filed taxes in 2019 will get $1,200.
Including Social Security, correct?
Right. And so in addition to people who didn't file their taxes, Social Security income recipients or disability recipients often don't file taxes because they don't have income that requires them to. They'll automatically get those payments as well. There are $500 payments for children. Dependents that are not children are left out of this. So they don't get the $500, they don't get the $1,200. So, you got an 18, 19-year-old in college. Sorry. And there are some income thresholds that don't hit too many people. Could hit some grape growers because, I know your income bounces around. So if you're above $150,000 as a joint filer, it starts to phase out. And as soon as you hit $200,000, it's gone. But that's going to put money in the pockets of most people in an effort to try to make sure when we decide to turn the economy back on, that the lights actually do come back on. Now, in terms of programs for COVID-19 for businesses, there's a few of them. There's the Payroll Protection Program. This is kind of This is a two-part program. So there's payroll protection, and that is a loan based on your average monthly payroll. So if you had a total payroll of $100,000, that would probably mean your average monthly payroll is $8,300. It gets complicated with seasonal employers, but we're just going to go with a 12-month moving average for the simplicity of illustrating this. So with a $100,000 payroll, your maximum loan amount would be $20,000. And then anything you pay for mortgage interest or payroll or rent or utilities from April 15th to June 10th would be forgiven. And then everything else would have to be paid back. That interest rate would be 0.5%. This is a small business loan. It's kind of like a 7A loan. I don't know if you know what that is as a grower, but what that basically means is these loans are administered by banks. They'll be rolling out these programs Friday, April 3rd. You can call your bank and get a loan. The idea was you'd be able to get a loan in I think it was 2 or 3 days. The banks have to do their due diligence, which basically means they have to check your credit score. They have to make sure you can pay this loan back. You do not have to put up collateral. You don't have to do a lot of things that you would have to do with a traditional loan, but you do have to have a decent credit score. The banks are very nervous about trying to make these payments out to growers and make the cash available in such a short period of time. I don't think it's actually going to happen. The law says it's going to happen. The banks say there's just no possible way they can do it. So demand, I think, is going to be really high for these loans over the next 5 to 7 days because there are businesses outside of agriculture that are not essential, that are burning through their cash very fast. The businesses that have been shut down. So they will be calling the bank 3, 5, 7 times a day trying to get this done. You may not want to do that. You may want to do that. It's up to you.
So I have a quick question. Because of the COVID-19 and the pandemic and a lot of things are shut down, I believe there's no walk-in traffic at the banks, right? So do you have to do this all by appointment?
Yes, appointment. A lot of it's not being done face-to-face. So there are a lot of different ways I think you can do it, but that probably will slow things down a little bit. And the other thing is this is really designed because there are a lot of businesses who have very low cash flow and are in the process of probably shutting down if they don't get something.
Yeah.
If you hear that in the background, that's my daughter running around, and that is definitely everybody's reality right now. So
Just so you know, I love hearing that in the background.
hopefully everybody out there does. You can choose between that program and the employee retention credit. So the employee retention credit is going to be a better program in terms of how much money you get, but you're going to have to wait till the end of the year. It's a tax credit. It's a reward for keeping employees on payroll while you continue to operate or not operate. Bad news for grape growers is you're either going to have to be a business that is shut down fully or partially, or you're going to have to show a substantial decline in revenue, 50% in the second quarter. Our grape growers, it does not look like, are going to see anything like that. There are other farmers who are decreasing their gross revenue in the second quarter to make sure they can take advantage of this program. Trucking is more expensive now. It's harder to find truck drivers. Older truck drivers are certainly nervous. Even young ones probably are as well. So, if you're a corn grower with corn in storage, and the corn price is really low right now, you just leave it in storage or you sell it and you get a deferred payment and your quarterly revenue goes down and you're eligible for this credit, which is a refundable credit that would pay 50% of your payroll for a period of time this year. So a really potentially large dollar amount. So if you have the ability to manipulate your revenue like that, go for it. Or if you just have really low revenue. Particularly if, I think the corn growers recognize that their prices are low partially because of COVID-19. So they don't want to necessarily move corn right now, pay more to move corn to get less. So they'll be eligible for funding like that.
I have a quick question. So this is a lot of information and There's a lot of numbers and stuff thrown out, but basically, didn't you also recap all of this in your crop update?
Yes. So you can see this in the crop update. And this is still really kind of the big picture view. One thing to keep in mind is, the federal government was probably 15% of our economy 3 weeks ago. And it might be 50 to 60% of the economy for the next 4 to 8 weeks. And this bill, or these 2 or 3 bills are a big part of that. So how your grape juice is purchased, how your business operates, how you pay your employees or how they get their money, more of it's going to come from the federal government than anything else, at least in the short term. So understanding it is pretty important and also difficult because none of this existed 3 weeks ago and
Right.
all of it exists now. So, any $20 trillion, what was a $20 trillion economy is going to be complicated. And now we shrink that to 13 or 14 and we, double federal spending. The economy is just going to look a lot different. So I think it's important for growers to understand it or try to understand it, especially in ways that directly affect them.
Yeah, well, thank you for all that information.
I've got a couple more.
Wow.
Yeah. So USDA was given additional funding. $14 billion was earmarked for the Commodity Credit Corporation. A lot of what the Commodity Credit Corporation does is buy commodities that are underpriced. So for a long time, they were buying grape juice when prices were low. So they will be buying more commodities than they typically do. I don't know if it'll be grape juice, but that money's there if it needs to be. Another $10 billion was earmarked for livestock and specialty crop producers. That program is going to be modeled after the tariff program that existed for corn growers and soybean growers during the tariff dispute last year. So that basically means if prices are affected by COVID-19 in your specialty crop area or your livestock area or milk, these will be closer to direct subsidies to farmers. So far, all news is good news for grape growers. Grape prices, if anything, are probably rising at the moment. So I don't think they'll see a lot of this as a benefit. But the money, like I said, is there if things are affected. There are a lot of questions about a paid sick leave credit that came up. A couple came up during our open office hours yesterday. So there is a mandatory paid sick leave that employers have to provide their employees. This only applies to certain employers. I think everybody under 50 employees is going to be exempt. The good news is, though, the employers that are subject to this, this is only sick leave that's somewhat related to COVID-19. So it's essentially a temporary program. The cost of the sick leave is going to be another refundable tax credit. So the employers that have to pay the sick leave out will essentially get a lot of that money back through tax credits. So most of this is targeted towards isolation orders or diagnoses of COVID-19, but it also includes child care providers that have closed down. If you have to stay home from work, you can use this sick leave that some employers now have to provide. The open question I think I have that I'm not sure has even been worked out yet is if you're an employer who does not have to provide this, are you eligible for this tax credit if you choose to provide it?
Well, I hope so.
I'm not sure that so we have this law, we don't have all the regulations yet. So it's a little complicated in that sense. And that's basically the rundown either of the programs that are extremely large in this legislation or have changed directly to include agriculture. And the other thing we did mention last week, I'll just throw it in here at the end, disaster loans, small business disaster loans, farmers are now eligible for those. They were not previously. And that's basically just your low interest loan.
Right.
And again, you can get that through your bank, but none of it would be forgiven.
Well, at least there's some help out there.
Yeah, and there's definitely a lot of help if farmers become directly affected by COVID-19. It does not appear that people think that that's going to happen based on current trends, but if it does, or if it affects, one or two growers individually in a really substantial way, these safety nets are there.
Good, I'm glad. Well, thank you for all this information.
All right, thank you.
Even though I feel like there's parts of it that I just glass over. There's so much out there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is a lot to, throw at our growers, but it's a complicated program, and some of it's mandatory and some of it's going to be funding that they're going to have to apply for. The USDA funding, all USDA funding was increased. So some of these programs growers are very used to. Conservation programs are used widely by our growers. They're going to have extra funding next year and this year. So, a lot of it, I think some of our growers already understand. They just, I think we just need to make sure that you guys know that there will be extra funding, and we don't necessarily know like how that extra conservation funding is going to play out. But we know that they're trying to get it to growers as fast as they can.
And if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to Kevin.
Yes, absolutely.
Not me. Call me if you have viticulture questions.
And your local bank.
Yes, thank you. All right. Well, I hope everybody has a great day. It seems like we're going to have some nice weather going forward. So send us pictures of everything going on and send us questions. And if you have any questions or comments, please do that below and we'll get that, or send us an email or call us on our cell phones. I just want to keep reiterating that we are available to you during this time, where it's not that we're all home doing nothing. We are ready to take your questions. We are ready to wanting that social interaction. So.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us virtually this week. We will, for real, actually, this time, see you next week. And what I mean by that is there is another video podcast after this one, or before this one. We'll see how they get posted. So we did 2 this week. Make sure you watch them both. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.